Otters, the heart of Western Southland, the epicentre of New Zealand's longest running and possibly the most perplexing zoological mysteries, or just plain myth. A cryptozoologist magnet, home territory for an elusive mammal that has been in and out of the news in New Zealand, perhaps before news even became a thing. How old? There's a couple of words allegedly attributed to an otter-like creature, the Kaureke and the Waitoreke. I need to add here that neither of those words I could find in any historic dictionaries or books about Maori myths, etc. There are quite a few in the local library, by the way. Some of the reports on the net linked to Maori words like Waitoreke are ascribed to otters, and then in the next breath an animal that lays eggs. That alone would have made them a platypus, or simply people just repeat what they read on the internet and give it unworthy validity. There's no consensus about what a Waitoreke or Kaureke is. It's all over the place. This is one. Another. Wasn't this one on Star Wars? Hell, given the high death toll, it's high time MPI culled them. My call is that the Maori word is simply made up. Reke means thrusting, so a literal translation is thrusting water. Doesn't look like an animal name to me, even a mythical one. Moving from this theme, on your screen is a Ponaturi, a goblin-like creature that is said to hide in rivers during the day and hunt nocturnally. Like a mermaid or leprechaun, we no longer advocate for their existence. However, humans like to believe in weird things, I guess. Captain Cook and his crew refer to an odd creature in Dusky Sound. They describe it as a 4-footed animal the size of a cat with short legs and mouse colour, likely a baby seal. This is an otter Cook would be familiar with, frolicking in the Northern Hemisphere waters. Less so this seal pup. Joining the ranks of explorers that are said to have eyed an otter-like creature was Julius von Haast, another credible character when it comes to poking in corners and geology, but not irrefutable. If the internet write-ups are to be believed, he thought there were also Sasquatches in them hills as well. And it's not as if Southland is the only place witnesses have spotted an otter-like creature. Whilst encounters entirely originate in the South Island, they are reasonably widespread. And keep in the back of your mind a minimum viable population of any animal is about 4 to 5 dozen. When you see one, this means by rights there's more. To give you a look at the scope of the sightings, I've knocked up a rough map and I'll give you a cross-section of the dates as well. This is by no means a comprehensive list. I'm merely trying to indicate they've been coming thick and fast for 160 odd years, and where the reports have been coming from apart from Otters. 1861, Bottle Lake in Christchurch, which I run round. 1868, Selwyn. 1905, Clutha River. 1920, Dusky Bay. 1921, Te Anau. 1929, Thornbury. 1940, Ojai. 1943, Riverton. 1956, Clifton Bridge. 1971 and 76, Hollyford. 1980s, Waihola. 1999, Mossburn. And 2011, to close it off, Tuatapere. Then we need to add to this the blokes who have gotten the bit between their teeth and gone out otter hunting, launching expeditions to finally prove their existence. gathering info, stalking them in my eyes, and lastly trying to entice them into traps. First one up, an Invercargill lawyer called Hall in the 1880s. Professor Wall had a go in the mid-1920s. J.S. Watson in the early 1960s. I couldn't find a snap of him, sorry. Another one I couldn't find a picture of was George Pollock, who was the most determined and fanatical of the bunch. Active in the 70s and 80s, much of what is on the net tracks back to him. Then there's Horry Sinclair, who founded the Sinclair wetlands in Lake Waitoreke, just off the main road 30 km south of Dunedin. That rather poor photo on your screen is him going out on the lake to lay traps. Southlander Lloyd Esther is still scratching about today. With all that water having gone underneath the bridge, you'd think we'd have some more compelling evidence apart from just sightings. I'm talking either physical evidence like remains, a den where fur could be retrieved and then DNA tested, a photograph even. No, nothing concrete. The wild otters of New Zealand aren't living up to their reputation as being curious in nature. Captive ones, on the other hand, have been aplenty. This is Gin. That's Gin with a J, and not as in the Gordon's variety, sadly. She escaped Auckland Zoo in 2006, and swum around Rangitoto during her 26 days on the loose. I've covered a more worrisome escape from Auckland Zoo in the previous video. Those two policemen are holding up a dead leopard. Link below. Clyde was another one. He cut loose from the Wellington Zoo in 1999 and ended up being adopted by some students in their flat. Nor are the proponents listed above exactly sure what type of otters people are seeing. There are, after all, 13 species, aquatic, marine and in between. Exactly how they ended up in New Zealand also has never been addressed, the nearest native population being in Indonesia. That map is of the Asian species and their habitats. It stands to reason that if they haven't managed to traverse the Timor Sea over to Australia in the last 10,000 years, the swim to New Zealand may well be a few lengths of the pool too many. George Pollock tried to answer this mystery by introducing another one, suggesting that the otters arrived in New Zealand aboard a stray Tamil vessel in the 1400s. Why oh why would any crew of any era put to sea with half a dozen otters necessary to start a population on board? The computer says no. What are these people seeing then? And can we even be sure specifically it's an otter? All the witnesses and possible stories come legends passed down from local Maori describe a creature that, given the details, resembles the attributes of an otter. There's a huge leap from this to saying it was definitely an otter. When you delve into the past, you'll also find out that beavers were said to live in and around Lake Hawea. Muskrats were identified in dusky sounds. A farmer in Selwyn, Canterbury in 1868 swears he saw an Australian quoll. And in 1883 the Masterton monster was said to be a cross between an otter and the creature from the movie The Thing. As with the South Island wildcat sighting video I did, link below and hint again to go watch it, this otter business is likely to be just misidentification combined with humans' piss-poor depth perception. Even early on, the aforementioned Professor Wall, who traipsed Fiordland trying to find evidence in the 1920s, said his conclusion was it was misidentification with a known species like, say, ferrets. To an untrained eye, there are several possible culprits. One thing we are not short of in New Zealand are bums, and the pricks can swim. And if you wanted another animal that would fool a layman at a distance, try a mongoose. We know for sure they were introduced here by frantic farmers in the 1870s to try and stem the rabbit tide, and the main area they were deposited was none other than Southland. I just happened to have done a video on that environmental mismatch as well, to load you up with more viewing pleasure. Without trying to spoil that old video and do justice to this one, mongoose didn't fare well here, and that's why there isn't a raft of them making a nuisance of themselves in your local park. Try another starter for 10 giant rats. That one trapped in Wellington in front of your nose is, from its nose to tail, 50 centimetres. To wrap this one up, people, concrete evidence of otters ever living in New Zealand is: we know 100% moose roamed Fiordland, and a dozen mongoose were released near Mossburn and Moa Creek, amongst other places. There is a faint skerrick of hope some may have survived. Nothing to say otters were or are here, except stories and the odd sighting of something familiar. Groups of 20 wild otters aren't uncommon overseas, and mature adults can travel 20 kilometres a day. Think back to Gordon Gin's escape in Auckland. One would have thought, with the prevalence of cell phone cameras, a playful and wild roaming creature like an otter would have become front page news fairly pronto. So therefore, there were and there are no otters in New Zealand, and perhaps it's a good thing too. You know what? The buggers bite.
Where'd my camera go?